And now we move to the next session. We are some 15 minutes behind the schedule. So in the first post-lunch paper presentation, I invite Srimati Nritya Jagannathan for her presentation on Dhyana Malika, insights into the principles and practice of Dhyanam in Krishnamacharya tradition. Srimati Nritya.
Srimate Anantaya Nagarajaya Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Vagishayatishwarabhyam Samprapta Chakrankana Bhashyasaram Shrinut Narangendra Yatau Samarpitaswam Shri Krishna Maryam Guruvarya Meede Virodhe Kartike Mase Shatatara Krutodayam Yogacharyam Krishnamaryam Guruvaryamaham Bhaje Krishna Suri Daya Patram Jnana Vairagya Bhushanam Srimad Venkatanathāryam Vandeham Yoga Deshikam Shri Gurubhyo Namah. I am happy to present before you today Shri Krishnamacharya's views on Dhyana, specifically from his work, the Dhyana Malika. For those who are not aware, Krishnamacharya was a renowned yoga master, teacher to the royal court of Mysore under Krishnaraja Wadiyar IV, an adept yogi, and significantly a bhakta and a bhagavata, unflinching in his devotion, to the point where once when an insurance salesman asked him to take out life insurance, he said he had no need for insurance and that Narayana was his insurance. And yet, this was also a remarkable teacher who was capable of adapting the traditional roots of Dhyanam. His perspective of Dhyanam was purely as a bhakta, but was also capable of adapting these to suit the needs of individuals. And he was also equally emphatic that it is for every practitioner to seek and to find his or her own personal Narayana. What I share with you today are insights from certain interviews with Shri Krishnamacharya and also certain select verses from the Dhyana Malika and the Yoganjali Sara, both poems composed by him. What comes through here is that for Krishnamacharya, Dhyanam and Puja were the same. They were one and the same. And while Dhyana Malika is composed as a guideline to Dhyana, he believed that Dhyanam and the purpose of yoga was to kindle, to nurture bhakti, and that without bhakti, yoga sadhana would lead to very limited benefits. Krishnamacharya was very strongly supportive of the Yoga Sutra as the pathway. He endorsed this in all his teachings, and his definitions of Dhyanam and his building up of practices also are in line with how Patanjali presents them. Specifically, he speaks about Tatra. There he says that it is that point where the mind is fixed. And when this focus is fixed and all the vrittis are in this direction, then that process is called Dhyanam. His ideal desha is the Hridaya, where the Antaryami resides. And he says that it is the mind that is taking the form of the Dhyeya, which ideally is the Antaryami, and it offers it to the Jivatma to see. And he says that this is the pinnacle of Dhyanam. It can happen only because of a preliminary practice of yoga, which includes pranayama, pratyahara, as well as yama and niyama. What comes through here in Krishnamacharya's works is that the Dhyeya, an object, is a must. And he was very clear that it is not possible to meditate on nothing. And while his ideal Dhyeya was the Antaryami, he also said that at a preliminary level, one could set the Deha at different points in the body, or to choose a Divya Vigraha or a Swayam Vyakta Vigraha as the object. And he also is in line with Patanjali's thought that the highest Dheya is Ishvara. And with Shabda, the Shabda of Pranava Japa, therefore being one of the most potent forms of Dhyana. And Krishnamacharya also emphasized that bhavana of Ishvara Prasada and Ishvara Anugraha through the linking. Certain ideas that he highlighted as disciplines to be followed: Shubha Ashraya, the choice of an auspicious object; Mitha Ayasam, a lifestyle that gives room for adequate but not excessive exercise; Mita Hita Aharam, food that is both beneficial, consumed in the right time, in the right manner, and of the right quality; Mita Yukta Kalika Netra, appropriate timely sleep; Mita Sarthaka Vak, essential speech, meaningful speech; Mita Gupta Sharira Sadhana Anushtana, the proper practice of appropriate sadhana done for one's own purpose. He says Mita Gupta, these are intimate practices taught by the teacher to the student and not for show or public consumption. And he insisted that the process towards the higher states of Dhyanam necessarily starts from a preliminary level, and little by little, as you would control a horse, in this manner, the mind has to be brought under control. His emphasis was on the stable, seated, erect posture, sitting without moving, achala, like a mountain. And as an outcome, how do you know that Dhyanam is truly happening, that one has experienced Dhyanam? Is with a sense of lightness, a freedom from inappropriate desires. He was very particular about desires that are, you could say, a part of our life, but then one had to transcend those, and a total freedom from inappropriate desires born from the kleshas, clarity of complexion, clarity of voice, absence of any kind of evacuation issues. And he said that the body of one who does dhyana glows like a doll that is beautifully painted. As far as the phala, the outcome of dhyanam was concerned, Krishnamacharya said there is the drishta phalam of fulfillment of all our dharmic desires, whether it is the birth of praja, acquisition of dharmic wealth, prosperity, arogyam. The adrishta phalam, he says, are sukham, anandam, and atmadarshan. Now, coming to the Dhyanamalika and the Yoganjali Saram, I'm taking you through certain select verses just to indicate Krishnamacharya's pathway of thought with regard to Dhyana. Prathamam pashyed gurvacharanam tatascha shrunuyat tadukta tatvam tatastu kuryat mananam samyat tatota kuryat shraddha yuktaha. You see the emphasis on a reverence to the Guru, the one who is capable of initiating us appropriately towards the path of Dhyanam. The importance of constantly remembering, listening to the teachings, reflecting on these teachings, and then implementing them. This he presents as one of the fundamental prerequisites even before commencing the pathway of Dhyana. Krishnamacharya speaks about the importance of Chitta Saukhyam. Why is Dhyanam important? And he says, what harm an agitated mind cannot do? And what is the purpose of useless talk that stems from thoughts that are uncontrolled? Yavat chittam vimalam pumsaha tavat saukhyam diviva bhuviva. He says, as long as the mind is clear, there is sukham here and everywhere. Coming to the prerequisites, the preparations for Dhyanam, you see Krishnamacharya following the pathway of the Ashtanga Yoga. Ashraya Maunam, Sthapaya Pitham, Chalaya Moolam, Varam Varam, Kuru Kuru Nityam Mahatim Mudram, Mahata Bandhe Nottama Vidhina, Bandhaya Chibukam, Bakshasi Samyak, Chalaya Chodhvam Moolam Muhu, Karshaya Tundam Prishtavi Lagnam, Sthapaya Drishtim Bhuvoshcha Madhye. So here you see the preparation in the form of asana practice, specifically the Mula Bandha that is established in Mahamudra. And then the importance of the Jalandhara Bandha, drawing in of the abdomen, basically further strengthening both the Mula and the Uddiyana Bandha. These are ways of ridding the body of all kinds of impurities. The Drishti is between the eyebrows. The importance of practicing in silence, asana and pranayama to be done in silence without any accompaniments or background music. So you see that all of this is the foundation. Why? Because to move into Dhyanam, you need a stable posture, reduction of all manner of distractions so that the body as well as the senses and mind are not impediments to the process of dhyana. He says, Vina varna dharmam tvava chitta shuddhi, vina shuddha mannam katham kaya shuddhi, vina drishti shuddhim katham dharana syat, vina prana shuddhi kvava dhyana varta. How can you refine the mind without following your dharma? The dharma becomes fundamental. In fact, Desikachar says so beautifully in one interview, he says, Chitta vritti nirodha is dharma and vrittayaha vritti sarupyam itaratra, he says, is adharma, because that is the chitta shuddhi, that is our truest nature. And without this dharma, where is the question of clarity or purity of the mind? Without the right diet, how can you purify the body? How can you commence dharana without that vision of choosing the appropriate object? And without regulating the prana, how can you move into dhyana? So the hierarchy is very clear. He repeats again, Krishnamacharya, respect yama, niyama, and then move on to asana. Use asana as a way of refining the body. And then pranayaman, sudhirgan, lengthen your breath. The length of the breath is extremely important for the smooth flow of the mind. That rapid pace of mental chatter slows down when the mind is able to connect to the breath. Then he says, it is through this process with pratyahara, establish a sensory discipline, and then commence dharana. How do you do this dharana? It is important to focus on the hridaya, the region of the hridaya akasha, which is Vishoka. That is where the dharana should be. Or one could choose a beautiful vigraha, a sundara murti, as ordained in the shastras. But for dhyanam, ekagrata, bring the mind into the state of attention, one-pointedness. And as you move through dhyana, you see that the mind literally mirrors the form of its focus. Further, as you perform pranayama, do it with the pranava. Krishnamacharya is very emphatic about sagarbha pranayama with the recitation of the mantra. The ekagra drishti sahitam, restrain the movement of the senses, of the eyes specifically. Continue with dharana. And then he says, when dharana is well established, it contributes to the stability of dhyanam. And when there is one is firmly established in dhyanam continuously, samadhim janayet sukham. It is a very easy saukhyam process of reaching the state of samadhi. In the Yoganjali Saram, Krishnamacharya speaks of the method of how one visualizes the form of the divine, possibly in the same pathway of the Amalanadipiran pasurams that we see in the Prabandhas. Adau padau tadanucha janghe paschaduru nabhim hridayam dhyatva bahu sundara vapusham sumukam lokaya gokulanatha. He says, start from the feet, slowly move your gaze upwards. Finish with your vision fixed on the divine face of Gokulanatha. This is the process, whether it is an external vigraha or whether this is that form that is enshrined in the heart space. He says this Padadi Kesha. Sometimes we also follow the Keshadi Padam method to bring a certain fixity to dharana and dhyana. Coming to the experience of samadhi as saguna and nirguna, he says, Yada tadatvam manvita samadhi saguno hitat yada tatra bahirvastu vismritam syat visheshataha. And when this mind has completely merged in that supreme truth, in that murti, with nothing else remembered, he says that moment is saguna. And what is nirguna? From Krishnamacharya's perspective, anandaschanu bhuyeta samadhir nirguno mataha samadhim nirgunam kechit asamprajnatam prachakshate. And he says that experience of unalloyed ananda that cannot be expressed, that alone, he says, is nirguna or asamprajnata. And he says in this state now, there is no distinction as dhyanam and dhyata, dhyanam, dhyayam, all of them merge like salt in water. What is the prayojanam? He says, is there anything that is not possible through dhyanam? Dhyanam confers strength of the mind. Janayati yogam, it leads towards further the connection with that Supreme. It expands your ability to have Viveka and sustains the experience of Ananda. And he says there is everything, whatever you need is possible through Dhyanam. Further, you see in the Yoganjali Saram, the importance of a sustained practice. This is emphasized repeatedly. Practice repeatedly along with the chanting. The Vedya Adhyayanam becomes a very important part of Krishnamacharya's teachings. In this manner, through sustained sadhana, you attain perfection in Dhyana. With Dhyanam comes Swarupa Siddhi. Very interestingly, he says, Tavava mamava sadanu saranat namanat mananat prasanna chittaha Bhagavan vanchitam akilam dattva kinte bhuyaha priyamiti hasati. He says these distinctions in names and forms don't matter. Your Lord, my Lord, it doesn't matter. Bring your mind to a state of prasannata. Meditate with humility. Meditate with devotion. And whatever that Lord, whatever name you give to that, is delighted and bestows upon you with great compassion whatever you seek. Repeatedly, again you see these emphasis coming again and again through the Yoganjali Saram and the Dhyaanamalika. Asana karanat tarasam sarasam pranayamat prabalam pranam dharana shuddham kuru mashtishkam dhyanat shuddham chittam nitya. So you see again that that progression, how asana prepares the body, gives a certain lightness. Pranayama strengthens the prana. Dharana contributes to the strengthening of the mind, of the intellect, of memory. And through dhyanam, the process of chitta shuddhi happens. Further, appropriate diet, the right sucharita, the right practices lead to destruction of kleshas. And then susthira chitto bhagavata vishnu ihaiva labhate shantim paramam. With this kind of a susthira chittam, fix your mind on Vishnu, and then here and now, paramam shantim is attained. The same shantim that is seen in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, is attained here and now through meditation on the Supreme. I conclude with just one more slide, which summarizes his teachings with regard to how Dhyanam paves the way from Anubhava to Anubhuti. This is one of the most beautiful of his verses. Nrityati yogi hridaye dhritva sundara vapusham lakshmi kantam jagadadharam paramatmanam nandati nandati nandatyeva. And so you see how for Krishnamacharya, Dhyanam has to lead to a perpetual vision of the Lord, of Lakshmi Narayana dancing in the space of the Hridayakasha. And lost in that vision, the yogi dances in delight. He says, Nandati, Nandati, Nandatyeva. There is only Ananda and nothing else. And that Ananda pervades through every state of consciousness, as you're awake, as you sleep, as you dream. That is the very life that penetrates through all our experiences. And so this is Krishnamacharya's vision of Dhyanam and the teachings that he communicates through Sir Desikachar as well as through his multiple works. Thank you to Indica Courses, to Dr. Harikiranji for giving me this opportunity, to Dr. Jayaraman, Dr. Nagaraj, to all the others as well. Thank you. And I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Madam, for the presentation. Nagaraj, do you have comments?
Let me just.
I'm just asking.
Wonderful. It was a revelation to most the people who have an opinion that yoga and bhakti do not go together. I have been proposing recently that in the academics of Indian culture, in historical studies, people have used the word bhakti movement in a very intense way. They talk about bhakti movement. But we have to propose another category called yoga movement. And this brings in, right from the Natha tradition, all the yoga things that have happened in the country. And then we can talk about all the historical graph of yogic writings, yogic mystic writings, and the whole category will come up there. Then there can come a hybrid category called Bhakti Yogic movement. So though there are iconoclast yogic movements in which you see they oppose Vigraharadhana, they oppose temple tradition and all that. So if you talk about yoga movement and then bring it out, first of all, that has to happen. Even that has not happened. First of once that happens, then obviously we can expect, we can anticipate that these people will highlight only the iconoclast aspect, anti-bhakti aspect of yoga. Then we will have an opportunity to show people like this. There is a lot of similarity between Sadashiva Brahmendra Kirtanas and the Dhyanamalika expressions. Even the expressions like Nandati, Nandati, Nandati Eva kind of things, we have parallels in Sadashiva Brahmendra Kirtanas. And Sadashiva Brahmendra appears to be an Advaita Vedantin, but he is a Bhakti person. He appears, when we bring out a Bhakti from him, he is a yoga person. And there are these parallels. All these nuances have not been brought out in the academic studies because the historians themselves are not knowledgeable at all in these areas. All that they knew is Bhakti. So Bhakti movement is the only thing that they could come up with. So these complex, intricate aspects like how Sri Vaishnavism went with yoga, how Dvaita, Madhva tradition went with yoga, and how Advaita went with yoga. All these nuances have to be brought out. Such a stalwart who brought yoga into modern era, like Krishnamacharya, Deshikanji, how they contributed to this kind of a synthesis. Nityaji, you have brought out very well. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, sir. I think, honestly, for me, what stands out from Krishnamacharya's work is his great love, that for him, bhakti is parama prema. And I think that is important for us to view that idea of Ishvara as something to view with a sense of vismaya, with wonder. Only then that bhakti comes. I think that is the beauty of these teachings. And he was able to integrate this into practices, nevertheless adapt practices to suit the individual requirement. So this is a tradition that continues still today in the way that Krishnamacharya Yogamandiram approaches application of Dhyanam to different individuals.
Thank you very much, madam. Thank you very much, Nagaraj ji, for the comments.